I know that the offseason is when everybody comes out of the woodwork with the craziest trades known to man and trades that, your uncle wouldn't make or even PlayStation for that matter. But when these trades come out of the Twilight Zone, I start to worry because they just don't make any sense. But it's worth talking about because it's the offseason. Let's talk crazy. Hey gang, Costa here from Puck Talk Montreal, and I want to lay the groundwork first, okay? And so that everybody understands where I'm coming from with my thought process. Number one, let's assume that Carey Price's contract is up for grabs come September 1st, correct? Now let's also assume that over the next 2 seasons, the salary cap goes up, I believe, roughly about $20 million, right? So in that time, there are 2 contracts the Montreal Canadiens are going to have to sign. One, obviously, is going to be Lane Hudson. The second one is going to be Ivan Demidov. So you could pretty much piss about $17 million out the window, correct? That's where my thought process is. And now currently, with Carey Price's contract, the Canadiens are $5.5 million over the offseason salary cap. Now, the reason why they want to move it is they want to get below the salary cap and still have about $4.5 million of wiggle room under the cap. So now, as I say that, there was an article that came out on Bleacher Nation from Tab Banford. Now, Tab and I used to both do segments on a show called Hockey This Week with Paul Cuthbert, who has since taken a hiatus from the internet because his Rangers suck ass. Sorry, Paul, I just have to tell the truth. But anyhow, Tab put out a trade, and I started to think, what the hell? Because it absolutely makes no sense. The trade's as follows. The Montreal Canadiens would trade Carey Price to the Blackhawks, along with their 2026 first-round pick and their 2027 first-round pick for Laurent Brossoit, Lucas Reichel, Chicago's second-round pick in 2026, Toronto's second-round pick, which Chicago holds in 2026, and Vancouver's 2027 pick that Chicago has in the second round. Now, I look at this and I say to myself, what exactly is Montreal trading picks for? Now, here's the thing about all this. The Chicago Blackhawks need to get rid of salary at the trade deadline. In order to do that, they need to be above the salary cap floor. Now, if they get rid of monies and contracts at the trade deadline, they may very well end up below the floor. Hence the reason why Tab wants them to go out and get Carey Price's contract. That part of it makes complete sense. There's no 2 ways about that. It is absolutely something the Chicago Blackhawks should look at. Here's the fun part. Why am I giving Chicago 2 first-round picks to help them get to the salary cap floor? And furthermore, why am I taking $5 million from their contracts and taking them on my cap? Right? Here's the thing. As I outlined, the Canadiens are currently $5.5 million over the cap. Correct? So if they take on both players, those being Laurent Brossoit and Lucas Reichel, that would be $5 million and they'd be over the cap by $500,000. Why would I even entertain that thought? And then to give up 2 back-to-back first-round picks just so that you can get to the salary cap floor is asinine. And think about it. Here's the even better part. Laurent Brossoit didn't play a game last season. He was injured. So, and to boot, he's a backup goaltender who's making $3.3 million a season as a backup. And our starter, Sam Montembeault, is making $3.25. Further to that, the Canadiens went out and got Kaapo Kähkönen. They've got Jacob Dobesch, who can be a capable backup. As well, according to some people, Kähkönen is nowhere near good enough to be an NHL backup. And then there's the up-and-comer Jacob Fowler. Why am I going out to get somebody who's long in the tooth like Brossoit, who's been a career backup, whether it's with Winnipeg, the Vegas Golden Knights, Edmonton Oilers, you name it? He's always been a backup goaltender. Why in the world am I going to go and get that contract? because Reichel is an RFA with arbitration rights next season. So I want that headache too, right? I respect Tab, don't get me wrong. But why would Montreal even entertain a deal like this? I'd like to know how much sense this actually makes for anybody. If you know how much sense this makes, put in the comments below, because I have no idea. I mean, the deal would make complete sense for the Blackhawks to make it, because then they'd be below the floor. They'd be above the floor, and they'd be able to get rid of their extra contracts that they would need in order to be able to offset Carey Price's contract acquisition and getting to the floor, and they would get 2 first-round picks. For what? Why am I giving you 2 first-round picks? Why are we even exchanging players? Take Carey Price's contract, give me a couple of second-round picks, and let's call it a day. Because we're doing you a favor. I don't want to take bodies off your team. Find somebody else to do that. I don't want your headache in Lucas Reichel, who's going to be an RFA with arbitration rights. And I don't want Laurent Brossoit, because I've got enough depth at the goaltending position right now. I don't need more. So make it worth my while if you want me to make that trade, but I'm not doing it as it's structured. It makes no sense. Please, if you can make sense of this, let me know. But like I said, I'm not taking on $5 million, giving you 2 first-round picks and Carey Price's contract so you can get to the salary cap floor in order for you to get rid of assets at the trade deadline to stockpile more picks. I'm not doing that. I'm not in the habit of doing favors for other teams and getting shafted while I'm doing it. And I'm sure Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon aren't as well. Now, moving on to the next deal. This one came up and was kind of interesting because it's Ryan O'Reilly. And this contract was mentioned by Cole Shelton on Heavy.com. And now, on the surface, this could be an interesting deal for the Montreal Canadiens. Ryan O'Reilly for Owen Beck, Jaden Struble, and a second-round pick in this year's upcoming draft. The Canadiens have 2. So which one of the 2? It would be the lesser of the 2. That's the one I would look to trade. But even at that, Ryan O'Reilly for Owen Beck, Jaden Struble, and a second-round pick. And you think to yourself, is that really worth it for the Nashville Predators? Barry Trotz is looking to augment this team and get them younger and better. Owen Beck and Jaden Struble would fit that bill. They'd be getting onto that roster with less as far as contracts is concerned. Their contracts combined would be about $2.3 million. And Ryan O'Reilly's is at $4.5 million per season. But then I come back to what I was talking about before. $4.5 million would be left on the cap if we got rid of Carey Price's deal, which we will sometime after September 1st. So ask yourself the question, why in the world would I take on a $4.5 million contract, even if I'm giving up $2.3 million? That would mean I would have only $2 million to play with under my cap in case of emergency. Why am I giving that away? Right? Think about it. Now, here's the caveat. I don't have a problem going out and making this deal and having that $2 million to play with, because you're talking about a top-tier centerman in the National Hockey League in Ryan O'Reilly, who's not only good in the faceoff dot, but is good defensively and offensively. I have no problem with it at all. The deal, as it's structured, makes sense. But to me, it's not enough for Nashville for them to give him up. It makes sense for the Canadiens, but just like Tab's deal, it looks like it's overly tilted towards the Canadiens. So I would throw in another pick, whether it's this year or next, who knows? But I would give him another pick, maybe a 2027 second round pick, whatever the case is. And then that would make the deal a little bit sweeter for Nashville and give them a little bit more as far as draft capital so that they can rebuild their team as their needs arise. That would make more sense. And in the meantime, getting Ryan O'Reilly would allow the Canadiens to develop Michael Hage into that top-tier center, because O'Reilly signed through this year and next year. Canadiens can get rid of him at the deadline if need be, whatever the case is. If the Canadiens are in playoff contention, obviously they won't be looking to jettison. They'll be looking to augment. But you never know the situation, right? But if the need arises that the Canadiens need to get rid of him, at that point they can, which is all fair and good, right? So as it is, the Ryan O'Reilly deal would make sense. But again, it would be tilted more in the Canadiens' favor. So I would say throw in another draft pick, and then that deal might be a little bit more of a reality than you might think. But they may very well not go for Owen Beck. They may ask for Hage. They may ask for Reinbacher instead of Struble. Who knows? We know that the Canadiens have no intention of getting rid of Hage and Reinbacher. So Owen Beck and James Struble would make sense. Let's see how that pans out. Then comes the next deal. And that one came from Nexter Quinton at Heavy.com as well. And that's the idea of getting Jonathan Marchessault and a second-round pick and sending it to the Predators for another 2026 pick and a fourth-round pick. So essentially what would happen is the Canadiens pick that they would give up would be higher than the pick they would get back from the Predators because the Predators would be lower in the standings. You get that idea? And then there would be a 2026 fourth-round pick thrown in there. Now, talking about the world of wacky, scrub out those 2 second-round picks, and basically you're trading Jonathan Marchessault for a fourth-round pick. Not happening as far as the Predators are concerned. When you have a guy like Jonathan Marchessault, you're going to be looking for a little bit more as far as draft capital or even prospects is concerned, because Marchessault carries a $5.5 million cap hit, and he's still a point-producing player with 56 points last season. So why in the world would Nashville give him up for a song and dance? Honestly. And that's the thing I have with these offseason trades. They make no sense. Granted, this one would be great for the Canadiens because Nashville gets nothing. Not even a first-round pick, 1 second-round pick that they're flopping, and a fourth-round pick for Jonathan Marchessault is essentially what they would be getting. What are you guys smoking that you come up with these deals? Honestly. I don't understand. I mean, if there was some value to both teams, I'd say yes. But now you're asking the Canadiens, again, who have $4.5 million left over under the cap once they get rid of Carey Price's contract, to take on $5.5 million. In an ideal world, the Canadiens would try to send something over to the Nashville Predators and ask the Predators to retain salary on Marchessault because of the $5.5 million cap hit. But I don't think Nashville would be interested in doing that if they were to get rid of a guy like Marchessault. So in Nashville's mind and everybody's mind, I think they'd be better off keeping Marchessault and trying to be a little bit more competitive. He's at the end of his contract, so next season he's a UFA. What happens? Who knows? But he's also older, and it goes against what the Canadiens have been doing. The Canadiens don't go out there to get veterans at 33 and 34 years old to add to a young team. It doesn't make sense, right? And like I said, Marchessault is a point producer. Ryan O'Reilly is a point producer, but he's also 34 years old. It's not what the Canadiens' plan is. The Canadiens will go out and get guys that are 26, 27 years old, maybe going into free agency and going out and getting those guys, but they're not in the market to go out and get guys that are long in the tooth to be able to bring them over. The exception to that would probably be somebody like a Sidney Crosby, who would be worth going out to get even for a season or two. But then again, at $8.7 million, the Canadiens don't have the cap space to go out and get Sidney Crosby unless they get rid of more than a few bodies, which is something, once more, that the Canadiens are not interested in doing. So we come back to it. Marchessault deal, not worth happening. The deal outlined for Carey Price's contract, not happening. And the one deal that does make sense, but is a little thin for Nashville, would be Ryan O'Reilly for Owen Beck, Struble, and a second-round pick. Canadiens would have to give up something more, whether it's a draft pick, another prospect, maybe a Joshua Roy. Who knows? But overall, all these deals, they're coming out of the Twilight Zone, whether they're favorable to the opposing team or whether they're favorable to the Canadiens or overly favorable. If you're going to make rumors, let them make sense. Don't just throw spaghetti to the wall and see if it sticks. Nobody's interested in that. We want stuff that makes sense, not stuff that's going to be completely stupid or clickbait in most cases, right? We as fans, we're hungry for stuff in the summer. So when a good deal comes around, we'll discuss it. We'll be happy to talk about it. We'll throw in details to try to make it better. But Carey Price and 2 first-round picks to take on guys that are not worth Chicago's time, where you're going to develop Reichel when he's in his last year of his RFA and has arbitration rights. Yeah, we want that headache. Sometimes I don't understand what people are thinking when it comes to stuff like that. Tell me what you think about these deals. Do you think the Canadiens should go out and get Ryan O'Reilly? I say yes, but do they add more to sweeten that deal for Nashville? Are you in agreement with Tab that Carey Price and 2 first-round picks should be traded to Chicago for Reichel, Brossoit, and a couple of second-round picks? And do you think Jonathan Marchessault, technically for a 4th-round pick, would be enough to get him from Nashville? I don't. Discuss it. Put it in the comments. Go back and forth between yourselves. Don't just write comments for me. Write comments and look at the replies from other people and see what they have to say. And let's keep the discussion going. Are there deals that you think might work? I'll look at those too, and I'll come back to you with my yes or no, or do I think there should be more? But holy hell, the Twilight Zone of trades? Not happening.